here. We're good to go? All right. So how many of you have been in the last year or so, or recently right now, are dealing with first-time buyers? Okay. Okay. How many of them have the down payment all on their own? And how many of them are being funded in some manner from someone else?
Yeah, in almost all cases, they're getting help from someone for me.
Okay. So the recent surveys show 70% of home buyers need down payment help. Okay. So if we know that, then in your presentations, when you're doing buyer presentations, or if you're even doing where you're talking to somebody that's a move-up buyer, so where they're selling and then wanting to move up, are you asking the questions about, is there anybody else involved that is going to be helping to fund this? Because what happens sometimes is you start running around with the buyer and then all of a sudden they go, well, before we can make this decision, we have to get this person to come have a look at it because they're actually helping out. Right? So there's lots of times that, if you don't understand how all the financing is going to work, then it becomes an issue down the road after you've put all this time and energy in. And so you should have somewhere in your buyer presentation or presentation to the client that question, right? And if you've had that situation, how have you handled it? For those that have dealt with the fact that you've had third parties, parents, relatives, friends, possibly private outside investors, how are you dealing with it, or how did you deal with it?
The first time I dealt with it, it did take me by surprise because, I just hadn't dealt with it before, and it was good friends, but one of the fathers was helping and they were like, oh, well, we need my dad to come see it before we can do anything. And then great guy, but wanted to kick the tires and, hadn't bought a house in 30 years. And it was just like a whole other situation to manage. So it was a lot of education there. But obviously it ended up okay, but just kind of making them feel heard as well, because it's their money is going into this as well, but focusing on like who's living there and what kinds of things have we already like thought through,
Right. And that's a great point, because what happens is you now are trying to educate somebody who has not been out with you over the last few months, who has not received all of the listings, right? So if you know ahead of time, then really important to add that person that's one of the decision makers earlier in the program. So they should also be receiving any listings that they're going to see. They should receive the email comments about, okay, after our showings, just following up. So they need to be involved. Yeah.
To Elizabeth's point, you also want to take account of like what that person does or did if they're retired, because that plays a huge factor into how they're going to assess all the homes and stuff. Like, are they in real estate? Were they a home inspector? Were they an investor? And how you kind of talk to them, just based on like, any other buyer. Like we've talked about working with engineers and how that's a little bit different. But just going back and, doing your kind of analysis on who they are as a person, just like as you do with buyers.
Right. Okay. Anybody else have that experience with the situation? How'd you deal with it?
I had two situations like that. One was by complete surprise, because I did ask him, because I always ask, do you have the deposit ready, and can you have it ready within 24 hours? The answer is always going to be yes. Yeah, no problem. And then as we're talking, then they happen to mention to me, well, my parents is contributing $10,000 to this to help me with the down payment. I'm like, okay, then what we need to do is we need to get everybody together here to better understand what's going on and make sure based on questions to find out how much weight do the parents have in the decision, right? In this situation, the first one, the parents didn't really have much weight. They were like, no, we trust our son, whatever he wants, we'll add to the deposit. So that was okay. That was fine. And then the second one was everything was great. No, I got the money. Everything's fine. We were looking at places, and then it turned out that the person didn't have the deposit. They were relying on a line of credit from the daughter. And I'm like, hold on here. Let me talk to the daughter now, because I got to figure out what is this line of credit? Is it accessible? How we're doing all of this? Because that now throws up a little bit of a red flag for me. And then based on conversations and talking to the person and everything, it all worked out fine, but that was a scary moment for me.
And again, it's, this is something that's become a norm. So how earlier in the process you deal with it, the more control you'll have over it. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, because it's important, because on two fronts. One, if they are going to be one of the decision makers, then you want to make sure they're as educated as the buyers that you're showing. Two, if they are injecting any kind of cash into this transaction, they need to be identified on FinTrack. Right? So, because where is the money coming from? So now if they're putting in the money, or if they move the money into one account that the clients are using, then that's two different situations. But if they are putting any type of, if it's the money's coming from their account or the deposit, then you have to identify them as well to be compliant with FinTrack. Okay. Yeah, Elizabeth?
Can we talk about too, I've heard that mortgage people will tell people now there's just an extra 50 grand in their account. There needs to be a gift letter or something like that. If you just have this, your parents just send you your down payment money for you to pay, that affects things, right? And there's a proper way to do that as well. Is there education there that you can do?
Yeah, so if you know that the parents are going to be giving money, ideally it should be in the buyer's account for 90 days. Okay, because the institutions are going to ask for bank statements saying, where did this money come from? In the event that they are not, then it needs to be a proper gift letter. Okay. And in each institution will have a specific way that gift letter has to, what it has to state. A lot of times it'll have to state that it is a gift, there's no interest, there's no repayment. So there's terms that they're looking for to take it in as a viable part of the down payment. Okay. So whatever institution, or if you find out that that's what it's going to be, and then you have to determine what financial institution are the buyers going to use, either mortgage broker or their own banking, and then contact that person earlier on in the process to find out what that guide is. Okay. Good question. Thank you. Any other questions on this? Okay, well, the next step of that, what happens is when you get a third party, all of a sudden in the last minute involved, sometimes they'll go, well, when I bought a house, we had the lawyer draft up the offer. We had all these conditions in the offer. So we're seeing more and more conditions in offers, conditions that 3-4 years ago, you wouldn't have seen. And people are trying to implement some conditions to tie up the property without really being committed to it. Okay, you'll see in some instances we've come across where they've made the condition on getting a certified appraisal done within 30 days. Well, all that does is hold up the property, right? So be cautious of that because they're trying to, and then as part of that clause, now this is more if you're on the listing side, when you see offers coming in, part of that clause, it also will state that the price will be adjusted if the appraisal comes in lower. Well, absolutely, you don't want that. So be cautious on the listing side. Make sure you go through every clause that come in on your listings. Any questions whatsoever, send me the complete offer. Okay, and I'll review it. But then also conditions that we're seeing that, we hadn't seen in the last little while, especially in, most areas now, are if people have a house to sell. Up until probably 18 months ago, we weren't seeing that because the market was strong enough that people were going like, I need to find something first. So they were buying without worrying about selling. But what you're seeing now is you are seeing a condition where it's conditional, the terms are conditional upon the buyer selling their property. Okay. If you're the listing person, you have to be cautious because some agents are trying to tie up the property by putting that condition in, but they're not putting it in escape clause. Okay. An escape clause basically says that the conditional upon the buyer selling their property, but it allows the seller to continue to sell the property. And in the event that the seller gets another offer acceptable to them, that then the buyer would have a certain number of hours, usually it's 48, to be able to either firm up the agreement or sign a mutual release. That's the term of that is escape clause. And it's if you are the listing agent, you want to make sure it's okay to go ahead and accept that condition on sale. After you do your due diligence and you want to make sure that the property that's getting the backup property, as we reference it, that the backup property, one, is priced right. Like if it's a property that's been sitting on the market for a while, no sense accepting that offer, right? And two, that there is an escape clause in there, okay?
I've had it where a seller or the buyer who's buying the property, their home is not even listed yet.
Right.
They're saying that, so then I definitely don't want that because, and then I've had one where there was on the market, but he said, the other agent telling me, we will reduce it once we know we're buying it, I'm aggressively pricing it later. So sometimes you have to communicate with the agent and see what they're going to price it for. Then if you feel comfortable, maybe it's worth.
Exactly.
Your home will know very rarely will get any showings after that.
Well,
Even though yeah, like many agents will say, even it's all conditional with escape, they may not even bother showing it.
Yeah.
So you will lose. You let your seller know that too.
yeah.
So they.
Yeah, I've seen that. And I'm in a situation right now where we have a property for sale in Grand Valley, a house 2 doors down. So 27 is our house, 29 is what's sold conditionally with an escape clause. And it seems that all showings have stopped in that area because I guess agents are waiting for that home to sell to find out, well, what did it sell for? And unfortunately, the condition was supposed to expire on July 15th. By the 19th, it all of a sudden updated to August 7th or 8th or something like that. So now it has been extended, that closing. So now we're waiting. And right now there has been 0 showings. We priced it right. It's properly priced, but I guess agents, myself included, I would wait to see what that home sells for.
Yeah, and so important though that this is a clause that, a condition that was always common years ago, right? That's just the way you wanted to move. You found a place, you made conditional on selling yours, very standard. But then when the market became very heated, nobody was using, no, because you know that the property was gonna sell. Now we're in a position where buyers aren't sure what their place is going to sell for, so now it becomes a good thing in one sense, because you're protecting the seller in some way to make sure that the people that are buying are gonna have the funds to close once they know they've got their house sold. But on the other sense, it does slow down the showing activity, because most agents will basically, and buyers will go, if it's already sold, then there's no sense going to look at it. But sold conditionally, with an escape clause, there sometimes can be an opportunity there, because if you're in a position that you can buy firm or conditional on financing, that the seller already realizes that person that bought their place conditionally on the sale is not going to get their place sold for value, whereas now you go in and you can certainly, I've had situations where that second offer is actually gets accepted for much less than what the previous offer was. Because they've tried to take a price where they thought was gonna be good. Now that time frame has expanded or shrunk for what maybe they have to do. And now you bring in an offer, and I have seen it where that accepted offer is much less than the one that they accepted conditionally on sale. Okay, so just have an eye out for it if you're on the listing side. If you are going to be working on it from the buyer's side, then make sure you do your presentation. Make sure that you've got what the property is going to be listed at. I would have the photos all ready to go. I'd have the listing prepped. I would have everything done so that it's a matter of, okay, all we have to do once we find that property, and then you can show the listing agent, look, we're all ready to go. Even though we're not on the market, here's the last sale, here's where we're going to be at, here's the photos, here's the tour, floor plans, green spec, everything's been done. Okay, so if you're going to use that as from the buyers, representing your buyers, just don't go in and say, well, once we find something, we're going to get the house ready, put on the market. It's got to be ready to go. I would even include a copy of the draft listing from the board, showing that it's just a matter of pressing the button and we're good to go. Okay, so just keep that, on both sides. If you're looking for, working with people that have to sell, or if you're on the listing side and you see that kind of agreement come in, just make sure you're covering and make that the seller has the right, if they are going to accept it, that it's a sellable backup, that you've got the right to continue to sell and accept other offers. Okay. Anybody seeing any other clauses that you've come across and all of a sudden go, oh, I haven't seen this one in a while, or this is a new one? Yeah, this here.
It's illegal for an agent to ask 3% commission when it's a 2.5% commission on the listing. He didn't even ask, he just put it, not as per MLS, but he checked the B on whatever the second clause. The listing agent will pay this much, and he asked for 3.
Okay. If the question is, can you ask for a different commission than offered on the MLS? You can, but you have to do it before you show the property.
Even that would be verbal, because when you're showing the property, he hasn't even drafted the offer yet.
No, but there is an actual, you can send and just say, basically, I'm working with a buyer under a buyer representation agreement that they're paying me 3%. And they've requested that for any properties they're going to see that they receive 3% commission. So no, that's not. Yeah. Was that somebody with a question? No. So the issue becomes is once you show a property as an agent, you've agreed to the terms of that MLS listing.
That's kind of,
So for them to come back and go, and ask for a different commission, when they've already shown the property, they've accepted those terms. Okay? And so there is a bit of a violation there for that. But if they do it before the showing, and then you go, and then you're okay, then they're allowed to do that based on the instructions of their buyer. Okay? And then if you say no, and they do go to show it, then they've accepted that, and you just, if they come in and just say, no, we're not agreeing to that as per my previous email, and no, we're not agreeing to it because you've accepted the terms of the MLS. And if you're looking at getting more on your commission as per your buyer representation agreement, get the rest from your buyer directly.
I think they're taking advantage of listings which are desperate or longer on time. I've seen that happen even back in the 90s. Yeah.
Absolutely. Agents are trying to basically say, I've got a buyer, I've got one of the only buyers. And so they're trying to basically say, in this particular case, I have this buyer representation agreement, and they're paying me 3%. But in that same agreement, it's in that buyer representation agreement, as you all know, because you're very familiar with it, it does state that if you put 3%, like whatever amount you're getting on your buyer representation agreement, if there is a shortfall from the collection from whatever's being offered, the buyer's responsible for the balance. Okay.
I'm seeing on a regular basis, and it could be just a template that they're using, that if the seller's agent takes out the buyer's client, the commission is now reduced to 1% commission. And I'm seeing that on the regular. So is that common that a buyer agent is going to be calling up the seller's agent like, hey, can you take my clients through that property? I'm too busy.
It's not that situation. It's the situation where agents from the GTA, this is why it started. Agents from the GTA were basically saying, go look at properties and like properties up north, east, west, but instead of taking them out and showing them the properties, they would basically say, go make appointments, go look at it with these other agents, listing agents, and then, but don't sign anything. And then when you find something, come back and I'll put the offer in for you. That's how this started. And it becomes twofold. It becomes an issue for one, that you are not representing your buyer properly. If you've not seen the property and showed it to them and been able to walk through it with them, it's a RICO violation, by the way, right? So, because you're not representing. And two, the other aspect of it is that if you're not familiar with the area, and you're not going to take the time to get familiar with it, do your education, become knowledgeable in that area, that too is a RICO violation. So by just sending your buyers around, having them run around and go look at properties and then send you the listing, or not even send you the listing. How many times have you had the agents where, oh, I couldn't get the full MLS listing, could you send it to me? That's because they're not on that board. They're not familiar with it. So that's why that clause has been inserted. Now you're seeing that all the time.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
And as a listing agent, can you deny access? I'm assuming you can for any clients that show up without an agent.
You absolutely, like if you're a listing agent and the first question I ask, are you working with an agent? Or if you don't even want to ask that right away, just ask them and say, well, it's great you want to see it. Are you familiar with the area? Are you familiar with this house? How did you come across this house? Have you put any offers in anywhere else? And if they say, yes, I've put offers in somewhere else, my next question is, oh, good, you must be working with an agent. Oh, no, well, then how did you put an offer in? And it's amazing how if you ask the questions and you have the right? You have the right. Then all of a sudden it comes out, well, if that's the way you're going to be, I'll just get my cousin to show it to me then.
That's what I told them.
Right.
Anything,
or I'll get my agent to show it to me,
yes.
right? So you absolutely, as the listing agent, you have the right to ask those questions. You are not obligated to show it to just anybody. Okay,
It's also protection of the property.
Yep.
You're looking out for your listing and your people, that's their property, and
Yeah.
it's the aspect of safety.
it's also safety for your personal
Yeah.
I always tell my sellers too, I wouldn't just show it to anybody who calls me because I want to make sure they're qualified buyers, right? They're serious, or they're just shopping around, like looking around.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that they're true buyers, even though they're buyers or not, is irrelevant. And I asked for a signature. And last time somebody called me from Realtor.ca. I said, I'll show you, you have to sign this agency agreement. I need your driver's license ID. It's only for that property. I'm not gonna, if you don't want to sign up with me forever, like, 2 months or 3 months for other properties, you have to sign up for this. They never came.
well, and that's, yeah, and that's okay. Now you're not wasting your time running around with somebody that is really not going to be serious enough. Now, after doing all of your questions, answer, if the buyer all of a sudden, is answering the right questions and you actually feel that there's an opportunity,
Don't lose that too, yeah.
please understand that you have a listing. You're there to service that listing. Okay? So after your questions, if you feel that there's possibility that they might be, possibility it could be something that they could be a buyer for this property, show the property, because you're there to represent the seller. You can ask all those questions. You can show a property to your listing. You can show your listing to somebody that you do not have a contract with, because that's servicing the listing. Okay? But do understand that under certain rules, you can't run around showing other properties, okay, without a buyer representation agreement, unless there's implied representation. Okay, even verbal. Implied representation is where you're asking questions of the buyer, such as, Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Buyer, it's nice that you're looking at buying something. Are you looking to have the guidance of a realtor, or are you looking to be self-represented? If they turn around and say, oh, no, we're not going to do this on our own, then great. No problem showing it to you, but I need to send you, first, a RICO guide. And this is a mandatory guide, and I just need you to acknowledge that you received it. And if they don't want to sign it, that's fine. Just get an acknowledgement from the email just stating, yes, we received it, and you explained it to them. Okay. From there, you could absolutely show them properties, but understand that there's real no protection for you in the event that you all of a sudden show them a property or two. They bring in another agent, you have nothing to fall back on. So if you can get into the practice, even if you're going to show one property, as Nasir does, is get a buyer representation agreement just for that specific property alone for 24 hours. Okay. And just make sure you got a holdover period in there for 60 to 90 days. Okay. Any questions on that? Everybody understand how to do that, why you do it?
I had somewhat of a similar situation. A Realtor.ca lead came in. They were asking questions regarding a property. And I'm like, well, this is fantastic. Can I give you a call so that way we can discuss this further? And they're like, no, I'd rather just communicate via email. And I immediately said, well, unfortunately, I don't feel comfortable in showing you this property without speaking to you first. If you like, please find an agent in your area that you feel comfortable with to show you this property, and then we can go that way. Immediately, I got a phone call. So,
yeah. And this is where understanding and practicing your dialogue, right? Practicing and knowing what questions you're going, what scenarios you're going to be in, working either with the buyer or with the seller is, I love when agents say, well, I really, don't have anything to do. Then you know what? You're either prospecting or you're practicing. So Because the questions are always going to be very similar. When you're dealing with a buyer, they're all going to be very similar. When you're dealing with a seller, they're all going to be very similar. So make sure that you're practicing those scenarios. And if you need someone to practice with, there's lots of agents in the office that you can, do that with. Okay. Or even us. So, yeah. And understanding, it's what you're doing is you're practicing your script, you're practicing your presentation.
Be more confident.
Right? Well, yeah, exactly. Right? Because the scenarios are going to come up. And if you haven't been in a scenario in a period of time, you're not quite on the best. You've lost your edge if you're not practicing. Okay. Yeah, Nancy.
I find with the, that all of my listings have that clause in them that the commission is going to be reduced by 1% if I show the property. But I think with me personally, just because it is my personality, if an agent calls and says, you know what, I just can't be there. Can you show my client? Absolutely. I will show your client. Thank you for your honesty. Because it's in my seller's best interest that I show the home. It's the ones that lie to me that I'm hitting that 1% on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a situation that I'd love to discuss when this is not being recorded.
Yeah. Yeah.
On the topic of different scenarios and how to speak and everything, it's similar, it's a little bit off topic, but something that I found that's come up from agents recently is talking to friends and family that they're working with that feel that they know more, or maybe the agent feels like they don't have to go all in on the presentation because it's a friend or a family member, and maybe just some advice or anything on that topic.
Yeah, it's when you let your guard down is when you get blindsided. So I've had that happen to me several times, unfortunately. And so when you are going in on a presentation, doesn't matter, friends, family, a referral that you think is a slam dunk, don't get lazy. Okay, do a full presentation. And ideally you could even start it off by saying, hey, I know we've known each other for a long time, but understand that this is important and I want to make sure you understand all the steps. So if you don't mind, we're just going to go through exactly what I do with all of my clients to make sure that you get the best representation and that there's no uncertainties, and go into your presentation. Okay. Dennis here.
So I had a very good compliment from my son. He advertised his condo for rent. I told you he's moving here for a job.
Yep.
Kijiji, some calls and then ghosting, right? We put it on the market, 5-10 days, nothing happened, for sale and for lease. Obviously, he said, I don't want to sell if I don't have to, so we priced it higher. But in case he gets it, he would have sold it. Then when we got the offer, it was a foreign student, so perfect. He knows because he's a student himself, so he feels very connected to them. And then during that time, we had another offer from a doctor coming from India, working at that hospital where my son is doing his lab work. The doctor, it was a husband, wife, and a child. That one was a single woman, hopefully no party woman. We don't know students, right? But there was a bidding war. Literally, we got higher than asking price on a rent, which rarely happens. Now he said, wow, I didn't realize how important it is because I used a realtor. Like, I said, okay, give me a Google review. He said, he said, we are related. I said, doesn't matter. Even if our names are the same, do it. And he's planning to do it. Even the agent gave me a review. Because I said, and the agent doesn't have a Google account, but there was a Find My Agent, so I gave him one too. Yeah. But it was such a smooth, like everything went so perfectly right. Date he got exactly September 1st the way he wanted. The other one wanted August 15th. So 15 days he would be either Airbnb or, it would be costing him more money. And furnished, so he didn't want to move a thing. He said, okay, I'm leaving everything, cutlery, everything. Like he just wants to get out and then figure it out after 1 or 2 years, whether he's coming back or not. But it went that smooth that, even he said, wow. So I said, see, we do our work, we get our job done. But we were lucky, I said, with the two offers, we got more money, but otherwise, but it started at full price. So it was even no bargain. He was wondering, is he coming to bargain? I said, I don't know until we get the offer. We got full price offer to start, right? So it was convenient. Like I'm just saying, he felt very good about it.
Yeah, and so that's why it's important to make sure that in situations where you think it just, I'm dealing with a longtime friend, or it's, my relative's place, or it's a real strong referral. Don't let your guard down, okay? Because at the end of some of those situations, all of a sudden they go, oh yeah, well, I've got this person that was recommended to me as well from my other friend. And it's like, oh, crap. I guess I should have, right? And then, so always ask those questions. Okay, is that what you were trying to? Yeah, and it happens.
Yeah.
Okay, it happens. So always prep for your appointments, no matter what they are. Okay. Okay, before I go on to the next thing, what's going on in the marketplace? What are you guys seeing? What's everybody seeing? Yeah.
Well, my townhouse sold. I can disclose the price. It's almost waived. I just got the status now.
Okay.
Certificate.
Okay.
Waiting for the waiver still. 100 grand over asking.
So this is the one
The
to
one
read.
at
Yeah.
Lakeview,
Yeah. This is the one down here that you put on at $9.99. Yeah.
So we only had one offer. It started 1,060,000 to start with. So he knew the value was there. We went back to 1,125,000, came back to 1,095,000. We said, no, it's gotta be 1.1. We said, okay, 5,000. They
Okay.
bought, yeah.
So with one offer,
Yeah.
you're able to get 100 grand over asking,
Yeah.
because the true value was,
It is true, yeah.
okay. So interesting scenario where you've got a buyer that saw a unique property. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned that this was one, even though there were other townhouses in the complex, this particular one had been updated, changed, so it was a unique property.
But it is facing a track, a GO train track, so that was a negative, and they
Yeah.
are behind neighbors. The other one that sold for 1,015,000
Yeah,
was backing onto a ravine and
okay,
smaller and
Smaller.
not as upgraded.
right,
So that set the price the way you're saying with the other house, it went for 1,015,000. So we added, let's say 50,000 for upgrades and another 700 square foot or 500 square foot bigger. You add the value based on that, and we got, what we got. So,
Okay.
and his closing date is August end, so which is perfect because he's moving to BC.
Yeah.
Right? He
Good.
needed to leave right away. And so it worked out, again.
and that's what we're seeing. And then I talked with people last week from different parts of Ontario. And that's what we're seeing, is that unique properties, buyers are there. It's when you have, let's call it a typical subdivision style or typical 3-bedroom semi, and there's 5 or 6 of them, then you've got to make sure your price is way more aggressive.
So the way I told the seller too, yes, we can price it at 1.150 right now, like when we were
Yeah.
listing it. The way the other ones are sitting for 60, 90 days at about 1,040,000, which are smaller, will be sitting like that. So let's take a chance on this 999, see what happens. At the most 7 days of waste of time. I mean, really,
Yeah.
not really waste, because you're getting traffic now. And we had 13 showings in 5 days, 13
Nice.
showing. And the open house, I think 7 people showed up.
There was 9 group.
9, there you go.
Almost like-
So, yeah, so there was a lot of activity that made a huge difference too. Because
Yeah.
people see that,
So buyers are out there, activity is there, but it's really price value to get them, right? What else is anybody seeing?
Funnily enough, I'm seeing a lot of like price increases. So like holding off offers at a certain price. I apparently maybe either no offers come in or ones that they don't like, and then they raise the price after too. It's risky.
Yes. Yeah. And that's where, if you're doing that scenario, you've got to make sure that the price is really, really aggressive, or the property is also really, really unique. Okay? Because it can It can backfire, but in some cases it can work. This case it worked out because it was a unique property.
And I prepared the seller. We may not get anything because of the market the way it is, so he knew, like he was
Yeah.
ready. In fact, the amendment was ready for the next day, and I said, just we'll discuss the price after the date is done. We didn't want to give him a high number.
It's fair because I saw one in Streetsville that got 13 offers or something recently and sold for a great price, like the price that they probably wanted. 13 offers, so it's still happening.
So that was the semi
Yeah.
in Streetsville, listed at $699.9.
Yeah.
Sold for $945 or $950.
So yeah,
Yeah.
crazy.
So value of the semi was probably in that
Yeah.
high eights, low nines, you know, so, but that's where you really got to look at the uniqueness of the location, the uniqueness of the property, condition of the property. Okay, either good or bad. So then it's a matter of looking at the scenario, but also understanding that you present it to the seller in such a way and go, yes, we can try this strategy, but in the event it doesn't work, understand then the history of that is still going to be there on the MLS, even if you cancel the listing and relist it. Okay, so it definitely can be a scenario that can work out, but you have to look at the strategy of how are we doing this? How are we prepping it? You know, the timing of it, that kind of stuff. Okay. So if you do want to do that, just as Nasir, you reached out, you know, and said, here's what I'm thinking and, you know, what are the pros and cons of it?
And the other option was pricing it normally 1.150 at 3% commission. He was willing to do that.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, but I said that may not work necessarily. Because your pricing is the key, where the buyer has to come in.
First thing is you got to get people through the door,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Activity wise in other areas, are you seeing any particular facet of the marketplace where you're seeing more activity than less activity? Okay. Okay. Well, here's an interesting, now how are you presenting to your existing sellers about what's going on in the marketplace? What are you supplying them with so they understand why their property isn't selling?
I recently did this with the Cambridge house that we have listed. Every month I have to provide a report, and in the report I generated the graphs showing the average selling price of a home, the days on the market and all of that. And because of that data that I provided, we finally reduced the price to a proper price that will now sell that home finally, because it's been on the market almost a year now, so.
Okay. So always keep doing your research and look, you know, make sure that you are reading articles, you're listening to, you know, you've subscribed to either some economists, you've subscribed to some publications on real estate market, just so that stuff you're going to be able to use as a third party endorsement, not that it's coming from you, put it in your own words, but always have that third party, because it's important. So here, I'm going to read you one that I just came across a few days ago. Pressure mounting on Ontario markets most exposed to tariffs. Beyond Toronto, housing markets across Southern Ontario are experiencing some of the steepest price declines in the country, as economic uncertainty and trade tensions take a growing toll on buyer confidence. Areas like Hamilton, Burlington, Niagara, Kitchener-Waterloo are feeling the brunt of a market downturn driven by fears over tariffs. While the Greater Toronto area has long been the focus, the softest conditions are now spreading outward into regions more vulnerable to external shocks. Tariffs and trade uncertainty are weighing heavily on communities with deep industrial roots. In Hamilton, the threat of new steel tariffs has hit confidence in both business and housing markets. Similar pressures are being felt in Windsor, Niagara, and other parts of Ontario that rely heavily on manufacturing and cross-border trade. Hamilton is the poster child for impact of steel tariffs, says the CEO of Real Property Solutions real estate platform. We're seeing the same sentiment-driven slowdown across much of southern Ontario. With new tariff threats potentially arriving August 1st, the housing market remains stuck in limbo. Often, uncertainty is worse than bad news. Businesses can't plan, investors don't know where to allocate capital, and companies aren't sure where or how to sell their products. Once we get clarity, regardless of the direction, I believe we'll see the market start to rebound. Price pressures. According to the latest data from the Canadian Real Estate Association, prices in June were down 7.5% year over year in Kitchener-Waterloo and fell annually by 5.8% in Niagara region and 8.7% in Hamilton. As home prices continue to slide across southern Ontario, industry leaders point to a potential mix of local oversupply and global uncertainty as driving forces behind the downturn. Korea data indicates prices in the Greater Toronto Area fell by 5.6% year over year in June, while they were down 4.8% in Greater Vancouver. In Toronto, it's a condo-specific issue. Tariffs are affecting national confidence a bit, but Toronto is mainly about condos. Both Toronto and Vancouver have seen the most pronounced price declines, but the nature of the downturn is concentrated in high-density housing. Detached and semi-detached markets in the GTA and Greater Vancouver are holding up relatively well, but condos, there's a real overhang right now. And that's driven by the influx of inventory. A flood of units has entered the market at the same time that demand is weakening, due in part to high financing costs and a dip in immigration. Adding to the pressure, many of these condos were purchased by investors now grappling with negative cash flow. Trade fears dampen market optimism. While the GTA's challenges stem largely from the condo sector, the rest of southern Ontario is grappling with a different kind of stress, one rooted in uncertainty over trade and tariffs. According to Robert Hogue, Assistant Chief Economist with RBC, the combination of high interest rates and lingering trade-related uncertainty has eroded confidence and left the market in a prolonged slump. Things are very soft. It's a market that has corrected significantly since the Bank of Canada began raising interest rates back in June of 2022. While the initial rate hikes triggered a swift decline in prices and activity, the market appeared to stabilize briefly when the bank paused its tightening cycle just over a year ago. But any momentum that had started to build was quickly dampened by global economic uncertainty, especially concerns surrounding trade tensions. As resale activity stalled, inventory levels rose sharply, pushing the region into a clear buyer's market. Prices are declining, not collapsing, but they are coming down. Asked whether Southern Ontario is now the softest housing region in the country, he responded, probably. While BC has also seen declines, the magnitude in Ontario has been more pronounced. Still, he noted that the correction follows a period of massive price escalation during the pandemic. Not everyone is disappointed to see prices come down. A lot of potential home buyers have been shut out of the market and probably seeing these declines as a good development. Affordability, however, remains highly strained. Despite the recent correction, prices are still elevated in historical terms, especially in the GTA. This is part of the process of reversing the deterioration in affordability that occurred during the pandemic. He expects the softness to persist for the near future. Tariff impacts are clearly playing a role. Another factor weighing on the region is tariff-related uncertainty, particularly in industrial hubs like Windsor, Hamilton, and Kitchener-Waterloo. Those areas are much more vulnerable to trade-related shocks. Confidence in those regions has been significantly affected. Senior data engineer at Korea said a mix of tariff-related uncertainty, rising inventory, and long-standing affordability challenges is driving the current downturn. What we are seeing right now is that the relatively most unaffordable or expensive areas of the country are experiencing the largest price declines. The trend is particularly clear in Ontario's greater GTA area and across the Golden Horseshoe, mirroring similar weakness in British Columbia's lower mainland. Sales activity and pricing have both taken a hit in recent months, but Korea's data points to especially sharp declines in parts of southwestern Ontario. Windsor is currently experiencing the lowest sales activity in about 12 years. At the same time, it's facing extremely high new listings and over inventory. The tariff impacts are clearly playing a role, especially with Windsor's economy being so closely tied to the auto sector. Price index for June indicated that the home sales in Hamilton sunk to a 15-year low for the month. While Korea doesn't forecast at the local level, their provincial outlook for Ontario has recently been revised to reflect the growing uncertainty. Originally for this year, we forecasted about a 4% decline in the number of sales. That's since been revised downward to just under 9%. The volatility stems in part from shifting U.S. trade policies. Market tenant groups, they realized we were seeing the early indicators or green shoots of a turnaround. It was too early to call it a recovery, but the data suggests that some markets had bottomed out. However, that momentum may now be at risk. And basically you just go through, they talk about more tariffs threatening a rebound. And then we also have Phil Sobert, CEO of Royal LePage, said that although prices in some secondary Ontario markets may appear more affordable compared to Toronto, they are still quite high relative to the national averages. People don't always realize it, but even though home prices seem cheaper in a place like Barrie compared to Toronto, they're actually more expensive than a city like Calgary. The ongoing uncertainty around tariffs and American trade policy continues to weigh on the market, especially in regions reliant on manufacturing. Sober emphasized that Canadians are starting to adjust to what he calls the new normal of trade tensions, comparing the current situation to pandemic period when people adapted to ongoing challenges. People are beginning to tune out the daily barrage from the White House because it doesn't seem to be affecting their day-to-day lives, he said. Ultimately, the biggest hurdle for the housing market right now is the psychological rather than structural. It's about how people feel. They don't feel confident making big investments, but that will pass. You tell me that I didn't cover off a lot of what's going on in this market and had third parties, not you, third parties from Korea, economists, a large CEO from a well-known Canadian company, all talking about the marketplace. So if you take that information and you put it into your own words, or you take up some of this and just, basically go, this is what's going on. Okay. This will help reinforce what you're trying to say, especially to your sellers. Does it make sense? Okay. I got this from the REM magazine, online REM magazine that I subscribe to. So if you're not subscribing to publications, okay, that, Korea News, Treb News, Economist, the real estate magazine online, this is where you're going to get the information from third parties. This is where you can get information for your podcasts, your newsletters, your stats that you're going to put out, right? You have to be the conduit of information. And if you're not, you need to be. Because if you're not, the clients are going to get it from somebody. Okay? Because I know I'm using this. I have an appointment to try and reduce my listing, and this got sent to them and just said, we're gonna discuss this tomorrow when I see you. Right? So they're going to already have digested this from third parties. I'm coming in to reinforce the fact of what's going.
Most of the first part is, it would actually good for the seller, but buyers could say, oh, we'll hold off, buy
Yep.
for another year, just to see.
Possibly.
Yeah, most buyers will be, like, they may not even read the whole thing at the end, oh, things will recover. They'll say, oh no, we're done, we don't want to buy, you know,
Right.
like, you have to put positive things, you know, to the buyer or seller based on, you know.
But if I was an investor right now,
It's a perfect, there's so much opportunity,
like,
yeah.
I would
As long
put
as you
a,
buy
I would
them,
put a
keep it.
positive spin on this and just say,
Keep
hey,
it
if
low.
you're an investor right now, and all you're looking for, understand in a down market, tenants still pay rent. So if you're an investor right now, or if you've got an investor looking at cash flow, I'd be going down to Windsor and trying to find something that's got positive cash flow, because with the adjustment in pricing, okay, adjustment in pricing, the return on their investment, because the cash flow hasn't changed. The tenants are still paying what they were paying,
It has dropped a little.
but not if they're existing tenants,
No.
right? If they're existing tenants in a building or even in a triplex or fourplex, and yet that pricing has come down, that's an opportunity. Right? What other communities? We know that Gotham, you know, he's got investors and does a lot of stuff with multi-units in North Bay. And I communicated a bit with Mike Berman, who does a lot of that, and he says, yeah, there's lots of opportunity up here right now. Okay, so understand the market, but for you to understand the market, you got to make sure you're getting information. And if you're not going online and researching it yourself, make it easy. Just subscribe to people, to all kinds of these avenues that will send you the information. Digest it, understand it. That's how, when you get the question, what's going on in the market, it's going to be top of mind.
And going on Facebook as your only source of information does not count.
Okay. Does anybody subscribe to any other publications that you can share, and just that we know where people can get information like this? So again, REM Magazine online.
I remember they used to have hard copies before.
Yeah.
Every.
What's nice,
brokerage.
yeah, so now it's all online, and they basically talk about it, and then they give you links to further ones, right? You know, your standard ones, Korea, AREA, boards, make sure you're part of that. Any economists.
Paying the membership, might as well use
Yeah.
the resources.
All right. Anything else?
Listing a house in Pickering now,
You're gonna get the one in
Next week.
Pickering? Okay,
going for a final visit to make sure everything is okay, leaving my sign there.
good.
Hopefully later this week.
I wanted to share quickly, I've had like highest highs and lowest lows this week, which is like pretty much the real estate industry, I think. So on one happy hand, I got a real life buyer who found me from my YouTube channel. And like,
Oh.
it's crazy to me. Thanks.
That's fabulous.
I know. I was like, is this a real person? He's
Herbie, get off the phone, Herbie. Stop it.
So that was exciting, especially because like I have 25 full subscribers. It's not like I have this booming YouTube channel yet or anything, but said that it made me seem trustworthy and that I knew information and stuff like that. So that was a really high. And a low was I didn't get that listing that I had mentioned a few weeks ago. It was like a surprisingly tough presentation, but they said, you know, loved your presentation. We know that you do a great job, but we really want pictures of our house in the real estate office downtown Elora, because people walk by that. So that's not something that I can change. They just decided to go with a random agent who happens to work at that office. So that was a bummer. But they really wanted their picture in the window in Elora.
Interesting. Okay, well, follow that listing.
Yes, for sure.
Keep following it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
Old fashioned.
yeah,
As
and
told-
that's a community thing that, yeah, that they've lived in the community for a while.
Mhm.
Do you know how they found their house?
Well, it
Originally?
was 31 years ago. I don't know. Yeah, originally they did use a real estate agent a long time ago, but when she told me her name, I was like, that person is retired now. It was like Iris or something. So
So don't be surprised that they found their house while they were walking the streets of Alara 31 years ago,
I bet you're right.
right?
Yeah.
I
Because
still come back to our auction.
yeah,
If
you
it
just,
doesn't
yeah,
sell,
just
yeah.
keep monitoring it. And wish them best and just say if it doesn't work out, and you decide that you're needed, you want to try a different route, I'm here to help.
Mhm. Exactly.
And then go out right now, go out and take 1 month of the biggest billboard in that area and put your,
All right. Love it.
right? So, right?
Big
Thank you for sharing. That's great, that's really important to understand that you go on appointments, you will not win them all, right? It's a numbers thing. The more appointments you go on, the more you put yourself out there, the more activity you're going to have, the more inquiries you're going to have, the more business you're going to end up doing. Okay? Good job. Okay, anything else? Okay, well, if there's nothing else, I have nothing else. I've covered off all the points that I wanted to cover off. Anybody doing open houses this weekend? I know Tommy's doing one on, oh, Nancy, yeah. Sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
Oh, no, it's okay. I just put it up. When Michelle stops recording this, there is something I would like to discuss with the group that I don't want published on YouTube.
Okay, everyone say bye.
Bye.